of an agenda. I'll look at this nationally because I know people are from all around the nation. But if we look at, there's a bit on this slide, right? But if we look at Australia, the way to divide it up is we have the risk states. So that's on the WA, ACT, Northern Territory, and Tasmania. And why we call them risk states is it's a proper insurance environment. So in my world as a consultant / broker, we can negotiate your premiums and your premium rate with the underwriter and negotiate better rates. And often you can get better claims outcomes because that underwriter has skin in the game. So it's a real insurance environment. You look at it like any other aspect of your insurance policies. And when we look at the other states being Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, and South Australia, it's what we call a managed fund state. And this is where a lot of the frustration is, because a managed fund state is, it's yes, you pay a premium, but it's more of a levy. In my mind, it's not real insurance. And if you look at, say, in particular, New South Wales and Victoria, you have the regulator being ICARE in New South Wales, WorkSafe Victoria here in Vic, and then you have claims agents that administer the scheme on your behalf. And it's an intermediate step, and often employers get frustrated with those. But if we look at the way it's running at the moment, WorkCover Queensland, the state government just announced that they will hold the average rate stable for the upcoming 25-26 renewal period. So that's good news for employers. So we won't see rate hikes there. South Australia, pretty stable as well. They've been through their heartache and they've fixed the scheme there. So we're expected the numbers not to fluctuate too much. New South Wales, there's a bit going on in New South Wales. This will be the third year of an 8% rate increase for the third year in a row. Be interesting to see what they do next year. Costs are through the roof in New South Wales, predominantly due to mental health claims. So we'll speak to a bit of that later in terms of potential legislative changes in that jurisdiction. And Victoria, we've had some real pain here for those that operate in this state. For the financial year 24, we know there was an average 42% rate increase across the board, which took all of us by surprise and really belted employers. So the word is that we won't see a rate increase again this year, because it was a fair bit to cop a couple of years ago. So we think it'll be relatively stable, and part of that is because when they jacked up the rates, they had to make some legislative changes to sort of make it a bit more fair and equitable for employers. So that's the lay of the land. One thing that it might be preaching the converted here, but this is a premium statement that we get in Victoria, but every state's the same, right? And first and foremost, if you're not across this document, get it and have a look at it, right? It's the biggest driver. The area highlighted there is just demonstrating that this employer is travelling worse than industry rate. And if you're travelling worse than the industry rate, that means you've had some claims and some claims costs, and that has increased your premium, right? Other spreadsheet here, again, this is a Victorian example, but each state's the same, right? So this is for those on the call that may have claims. And there's a lot in this spreadsheet, right? But ultimately, you should be able to get this claims data from your insurer or claims agent every month, right? And this might fry your brain a little bit, but if you look at the managed fund states, so as I said, Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, and South Australia, in those states, you're not actually the client. So if I use Victoria as an example, all claims agents here, we've got Allianz, DXC, EML, and Gallagher Bassett. They work for and on behalf of the Victorian WorkCover Authority. So your premium goes to WorkCover Victoria, and they pay them a fee to administer the scheme on their behalf. So if they don't have a license, they don't have a business. So ultimately, their client is WorkSafe first and foremost, and you're just a stakeholder. That might feel really frustrating, but I can guarantee you might feel that effect when it comes to some of the claims management strategies or lack thereof. Do you have an escalation point at the insurer? That's really important, particularly around the claims. You've got to be the squeaky wheel. Otherwise, you don't get the oil. So, don't want to sound harsh here, but if you're dealing with a claim in the early parts of it, often you're dealing with the 22, 23-year-old claims manager that's got very limited experience, probably no commercial mouse, and doesn't understand your sector or the frustration of what claims management and return to work looks like for a business. So if you've got some difficult claims and your premium's headed the wrong way, make sure you get in front of somebody senior at your insurer. So you can have dare I say, a proper strategic adult conversation with them to get some good claims outcomes. It's really important. Otherwise, we just feel like we're chasing our tail. And for those that have managed claims in workers' comp, a week can become a month, can become a year really, really quickly. And if all the data that shows if somebody's been off work for 13 weeks or more, good luck. It's really difficult getting them back. And that just says to me it's going to be a high cost thing. So, and when we're speaking about the managing non-work related illness and injury, it's really important, right? So they don't have to have the claim, as I said. We can provide supports and adjustments where reasonably practicable. So we don't have to create a hospital wing or a dumping ground of people with injuries. All we want to do is make sure that, what is it that it takes to physically and mentally do the job? And then is that a fit, right? So you can arrange your own assessments of capacity with independent doctors, but they need to know what they're measuring against. I think, documenting the physical requirements of a rigger or a document is pretty easy, right? But also think what's really important this day and age is what does it mentally take to do that job, or what are the cognitive behavioural requirements? Because if somebody's going through a divorce, they've got a kid on drugs, financial difficulties, they're not firing all cylinders, their attention and concentration might be diminished, and therefore that's where the risk lies. So it's really important to have the physical and cognitive behavioural demands of the job documented, so that if we are sending somebody off to an assessment, we've got some expert opinion as to whether that's a fit or not. If it's a fit, great. Can we make some adjustments? That's great. We keep them at work. Or sometimes, if there's not a fit, then it might result in an exit. As I said, the psychological injuries, I would argue that 50% of the stuff I'm seeing now is related to mental health conditions, claims, or whatever it may be. And not wanting, it is different, right? Because somebody walks in with a broken leg, they're on crutches, it's easy to make those adjustments. So I'm not saying it's easy, so you can do that, but sometimes we overcomplicate the psychological stuff, that in many respects, what are they struggling with? Can we make the adjustments? Is that achievable? And then package that up and put it in some sort of plan to either return them to work or keep them at work safe. But moving quickly, and as a manager, having those conversations before it escalates is really important. So if I had $1 for every time you could sense it was interpersonal conflict, then he said, she said, something blows up, I'm dealing with a mental health claim. Whereas you could see that the tension was there. If we nip it in the bud then and there and fix it, we don't have mental health claims. So I think it's really important to move quickly. And particularly, as I said, it doesn't have to be work-related, because if we aggravate that non-work-related condition, the legislation across Australia states that, it's going to be an accepted claim. Mental health claims can be difficult. I think the key is jumping in early, use the supports that you've got. But there are ways and means of, if we can't get the person back to work, it's your premium, how do we resolve that claim? Ideally, they go and get another job elsewhere, but that's not always the case.